So just as we ended the last half hour, we spoke with the former United States Ambassador Gregory Slayton about the comment made by Democratic Party consultant Hilary Rosen on television. And the comment was, Ann Romney has never worked a day in her life. That's not just directed at Ann Romney. That was directed at, and you know this and I know this, it was directed to stay-at-home parents. Because for some, and perhaps an increasing constituency of people, the stay-at-home parent is devalued, not seen as being significantly important anymore. Bit of an anachronism, a little bit of a throwback to yesteryear, not really with it any longer. Well, I have two members of my Hockey Mums panel joining me on the Roy Green Show on the Chorus Radio Network. Two regular members of the Hockey Mums panel on the Roy Green Show on the Chorus Radio Network. Michelle Olson and Sheila Gunn Reid. Michelle is the past president of, what was the organization, Michelle?
Home by Choice Association of Alberta.
Yes, and you're a teacher.
You bet.
And Sheila Gunn Reid is a stay-at-home mom, and she's a paramedic as well. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Roy.
And I took it a little bit in the ear from Sheila for not contacting sooner on this issue. You wanted to hear from me sooner than you did, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I had to take it upon myself, but that's okay.
Well, and I responded, and I'm glad you did.
Yes.
And with us as well is, we can't say hockey mom because she's in the deep south in the United States, so we'll have to say soccer mom from the U.S., Lori LeVar-Pierce. Hi, Lori.
Hello, Roy.
And in your story, you were with us after you allowed your 10-year-old son to walk to soccer practice alone, and it wasn't very far from your home, I think a quarter of a mile?
About a total of a mile by the time he got there. But, yes, my neighbors called the police on him.
And the police arrived at your door, and you got quite a lecture.
I did. And I've learned a lot since.
Well, I'm sure you're still the great mom you've always been.
I would hope so. I hope a better mom because of all of that, actually.
Well, let me introduce you to Michelle and Sheila. Lori.
Hello.
Hi, Lori. Nice to hear you.
So let's start. Let's get going on this, and let's start with you, Sheila, because you're the one who got in touch with me, and you did it by Twitter, and it was. Yep. I mean, I almost got blasted by Sheila for not assembling the Hockey Mums on this one. So take it on and tell us what you think of what Ms. Hilary Rosen actually meant to say.
Well, I think she said exactly what she meant to say. She's just one of those modern neo-feminists who think that stay-at-home moms don't have any value. She thinks that she's out there fighting for the equality of women and our freedom of choice. But she, in her own mind, she has this little caste system, this hierarchy of women. And us women who choose to raise our own children and the next generation of Canadians, well, we're at the bottom of this hierarchy. And that sure doesn't seem like equality to me.
Well, when I said what she meant to say was, I don't think she was limiting it to Ann Romney.
Oh, no, she meant all of us, that we have not worked a day in our life. I mean, if I'm not working a day in my life, does that mean that the daycare providers, they're not working either because they're taking care of children every day? Is it because I'm biologically tied to my children that it can't be considered work?
Michelle, why don't you pick it up?
That's a good point, Sheila. I just think, Roy, that Ms. Rosen's comments, well, first of all, anybody who makes a comment like that about stay-at-home mothers has clearly not been one because it's just a really asinine thing to say. But it's just a snapshot of the lack of value that's placed on the work of stay-at-home moms. I mean, there's this misconception that we as women are only valuable to society if we're in the paid workforce paying taxes. And then we see this notion further perpetuated by our politicians as well as public policy that is less than family friendly. But, you know, the sad reality is that I'm not bringing home a hefty paycheck for staying home with my kids. But my husband and I, we can see beyond that, and we acknowledge the true value that's behind our choice to stay at home and raise our preschool kids. We're providing a stable, supportive environment for our kids. I'm a steadfast fixture in their life. I'm there to provide them with reassurance, moral direction, security. I mean, all those great things, discipline, love. And these are the things that our children need to be productive, valuable citizens.
I heard a show in Ontario about, maybe go back 10 or 12 years, and I'll never forget, it was on this very same subject. And I'll never forget a father who called in, and he had been in the habit of dropping off his child at a daycare center in the morning and picking up the child in the evening. Or maybe his wife dropped off the child and then picked up the child in the evening. One or the other would do that on a daily basis. And he said one day when he picked up to his child, who was about, I think, 3 years old, the child turned around to the daycare worker and said, I'll see you tomorrow, Mommy. And he said, that was the last day we used daycare. It wasn't a slight against the daycare worker. But he said, essentially, that is when I realized what my responsibility as a parent is, more directly. And he went home and told his wife, and she agreed. So, Lori, your thoughts on this?
Well, I like what Michelle said especially, and of course Sheila has a very valid point but I think what Hilary has spoken there, she's representing kind of the bigger picture of society that just does not yet value all the work that stay-at-home parents do. I have been a working woman, and I have been a stay-at-home mom, and I can tell you that being a stay-at-home mom is way harder than I ever imagined it would be before I did it, much less what anybody else thinks it is. And I just don't know that we value that. I think we give a lot of lip service to it's great, we're glad you're doing it, but I don't know yet that we have put maybe the policies into place or the support systems into place that really say we value this. We want it to continue.
Well, if I could just interject really quickly, Roy, we see the difference in the value placed on motherhood in the policy that exists in both the United States and then in Canada. Of course, as far as I understand, you're still entitled to a maternity leave of 20 weeks in the U.S. Is that correct, Lori?
That varies depending on job. I know teachers that get about 6 weeks plus whatever vacation they've accrued.
Because here in Canada, it spoke volumes when they brought out the policy of, mothers being able to take a maternity leave of 1 year prior, after they had a child. So that's the kind of direction that we need to see, is the placing of value on that choice.
Yeah, right. And that's my point. I don't think there's enough in there. There's still a huge disconnect between we think this is important, we value it, we're going to support this.
Well, here I am, like I say, I'm sitting on a university degree, and I've given up my paycheck. I've given up the advancement of my career, my status as a professional, yet there really is no public policy that offsets the costs for my family. Even though we know that I am the best care for choice for my children, there's nothing that really backs that up.
I don't know if it's still the rule or the law, but until recently, and it may still be, until recently, single-income families were not permitted to deduct their child care expenses at income tax time, but dual income families were.
Yes.
Talk about unfairness. Talk about in place policy unfairness that is directed to really denigrate the value of the stay-at-home parent, the one-income family.
Well, it's placing value on some unrelated person caring for my child over the love and care and affection and stewardship that I can give them as a mother. It's diminishing that completely, Roy. I mean, like Michelle said, I'm trained as a paramedic. I'm also trained as an oil field safety instructor. There's a lot of things I can do with my education, especially in Alberta. But the best, most rewarding thing that I can do with my life right now is to raise good Canadians.
And you know what? Your kids will be better adjusted because Mom is home. They will be better adjusted because of that. And I suspect they bring their buddies over.
They do.
There you go.
Often.
Well, I have to tell you, too, I think the U.S. and Canada are different. I think Canada is a little farther ahead than the U.S. is policy-wise. But I have to echo what both of these women have said. I have an advanced degree. I had a fabulous career in the working world. I chose to stay at home full-time. And I chose that because that was what was the best thing for my family, and I wanted, if I was going to have children, I wanted to commit to that. And for me, that was the best choice available. At the moment, I happen to be back in the workforce, so I've done all of it, kind of, if you will. My kids are old enough that I can sort of transition back to that, and yet it still doesn't diminish what I do anywhere, especially the work that I do at home, in addition to what I do some out in the workforce now.
That's a tough one. I mean, as hard as this choice is, it is a choice. And I'm just curious as to what exists out there as far as perception, and these parents that are soon to be parents or have yet to make this choice. What are your thoughts? What do you want to do? I mean, we've asked parents. There's been polls upon parents asking them, when you have children, who do you want to be the primary caregiver in Canada? And 9 out of 10 families will say that they themselves want to be the primary caregiver. So I'm curious to hear what your listeners have to say about, given the professional sacrifices that you would have to make and the giving up of your paycheck, would you choose to be the primary caregiver for your children?
That's a very good question. Yeah. So here it is then. Will you make the choice to be a stay-at-home, one parent stays home to raise the children family? Have you made that choice? 1-877-399-9898. You know the sacrifices, financial sacrifices. Are they worth it? 1-877-399-9898. Will you make the decision to be a stay-at-home family? Have you made that decision? And here's another question for you. If you are a stay-at-home, one parent stays home to raise the children family, have you been the subject of criticism or even ridicule? 1-877-399-9898. Roy Green Show will come back with your calls right after this. All right, let's get back to our panel. Lori, Sheila, and Michelle, our hockey mom / soccer mom panel, and we're into the Ann Romney never worked a day in her life statement. And lots of calls immediately to the question that was raised. And Kate, let me start with you in Hamilton.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead, Kate.
Okay, sure. No, I just quickly caught what you were saying and wanted to phone in because I started my own business 10 years ago. It became extremely successful. And then I got married and got pregnant and thought I could take a little bit of time off and then go back to work. And I did that. But then after, I guess, when my first child was 10 months, I really realized that it should be me to be the one to teach him about yes and no and right and wrong. And I felt so strongly that I gave up the business and had another child. We went down to my husband's salary, his income, and definitely had to make sacrifices. I had to give up the business that I worked so hard to create. We've gone down to one income and had to reduce things like wonderful holidays we would take and go to lots of amazing foreign countries.
Sure. But it's all proving to be worth it, right?
It's absolutely worth it. I think that we should be raising our children. I don't think daycare should be raising our children. I think that we've had our children and we're the ones that should be raising them.
Well, that's the point that was being made. Michelle, Sheila, Lori, who wants to talk to Kate on this one? Everybody, I would think.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in. I mean, her story is very similar to mine. Very independent lady until I had my kids. And I realized that if there's anybody in the world that's going to instill the values that I'm so happy my mother and father instilled in me, it was going to be me to do that for my children. And we certainly have everything we need at home and some of the things we want, but most importantly, the kids have me and I have them.
Yeah. Kate, have you run into any situations where you've been criticized or perhaps looked down on? I've heard moms, stay-at-home moms, say that because of the decision.
No, I mean I've had the opposite. I've had actually like all the stay-at-home moms be extremely supportive of it, and then all the ones that aren't, just kind of brush it off. And I think that's because I honestly feel deep down, I just don't know how I could drop my kid off for, 8 to 10 hours a day for 5 days a week and leave them. And I'm sure that is such a hard thing for most women that do it to go through. And someone said to me once, your kids don't remember the money, they remember you. And I think that has stuck with me forever because, they remember you. They don't remember if you had, lavish this or lavish that. And there's also plenty of time to make money later on. So right now, this is the most important sacrifice and the best sacrifice that I've made,
Kate, thank you so much for the call. And, the clock really got away from us. Michelle, Sheila Gunn Reid, Michelle Olsen, Sheila Gunn Reid, Lori LeVar Reed, Pierce, with us from the United States. We're going to have to do this again and soon and for a longer period of time.
You bet, Roy.
Okay?
I'll remind you, Roy.
Oh, I'm sure you will, Sheila. Maybe we'll even do it next weekend, and we'll set aside an hour where we can take a concentrated number of phone calls and really get into the issue.
For sure.
That would be awesome. That would be great.
Okay. Thanks so much, all three of you. Thanks for the
Roy.
reminder, Sheila.
Thank you.
Take care.
Roy Green Show on the Cordless Radio Network. We're coming right back.